Hello everyone, welcome back to the second part of the Lean Maker course. Today, or in this part, I'm going to talk about not just building your presence in the web, but also using that. So maybe by now you have a page with a lot of visitors and you want to turn that into something valuable and maybe sell some products. So how did my journey start here? As I told you in the last part, I always created electronic projects and posted them on my blog. And one of them was this ESP8266 weather station. It had several nice features. It could display just the time, but also forecast weather, tell current weather situation. It could be updated over the air and was connected to the internet and would fetch the data from there. So I created that project, I wrote about it, I open sourced the source code and then forgot about it. And after a while I realized that there was some interesting traffic coming to my blog, especially to this weather station project. So I went to analytics, Google Analytics, and tried to figure out where that traffic came from. And it turns out it came from a page called Thingiverse. What is Thingiverse? It's a page where you can post your designs for 3D printed projects. And apparently someone had created a nice enclosure for my weather station. And people seemed to like this and printed it, but also needed to know how to build the hardware, the electronics inside the enclosure. And the designer of this enclosure was nice enough to link to my project and also to my source code on GitHub. And that drove some considerable traffic to my page. What do you make of this information? So you know that people are interested in your project and might be also interested in building it. But how do you turn that into a product? One way to do it might be to create a starter kit and sell all the components in one package. This makes it also easier for people wanting to build it to buy the right components and not spend a lot of time online figuring out which pieces work together best. Okay, so we figured out that we wanted to build a starter kit, but how do you begin creating a new product? Let's take one step back. I'm a big fan of this book, The Lean Startup from Eric Ries. It is a concept of how you can approach new things, exploring unknown areas where you have not a lot of experience. So the traditional approach to building a starter kit would be to go online, find someone who produces that for you, and then have it created or manufactured in large quantities. But there must be a simpler approach, and Eric Ries describes in this book a concept he calls the minimum viable product, and this is about reducing everything new to the minimal thing that still brings value to your customer. Let me tell you this or explain the concept of a minimum viable product or MVP on a quick story, which is true, by the way. And the story is called the Parrot cage story. So a while back there was a British company, and basically they were creating and running search engines. So they had a lot of data of what people were looking for, and one thing they figured out that a lot of people on their search engine were looking for parrot cages. So again, what do you make with this information? You know that people are looking for parrot cages, and another thing, they also could figure out that there were a lot of searches but not a lot of hits. So they thought maybe we can go into the business of selling parrot cages, but it is just a hunch. Do you really want to bet a lot of money on just a hunch? There is an easier way. This is building a simple website that just offers Parrot cages. You can even add prices for the Parrot cages, and then allow people to click on it and see if this drives enough traffic. And they built up this page in a very short time, put a few nice pictures, but they didn't really intend to buy the products yet. They just wanted to know if enough people would click on their products and maybe even click on the next step of buying it. So in the world of today's internet, if you have an interesting product and if you can drive enough traffic to your product page, you can just try this out very easily. You might offend a few people, but in the bigger scheme of things, this might be a very cheap approach and you can learn from it without investing too much time and money. So this company had a page called justcages.com up and running within just a very short time. And after that, they decided to actually go into this business, and afterwards they created a lot of other niche sites based on the information they had from their data. So Lean Startup and Minimum Viable Product is all about innovate iteratively and about reducing waste. One way that company could have approached the problem was to build up the shop, find someone producing or providing Parrot cages to them, then build up a stock, then pay a lot of advertisement and drive people to their page, and then ship it, and potentially to only figure out that not a lot of people were interested in buying it. So their waste would be investing a lot of time and money in building a product that no one wanted. So the concept in Lean Startup is to build something as reduced to the minimum as possible, then measure the results, learn from these results, and then start the process all over again. And if your measurements and what you learned from them indicate that your product doesn't have a market, then change your product or your market and try something new, and the cycle starts over again. So again, we have 4 components and we decided to build a kit, but how do we go on with this? So maybe we don't really have to build our own product. Maybe there's an easier way. Do you know the sentence, fake it until you make it? I like it very much because it kind of expresses the way I like to work in this internet business. It means that you just pretend with something until you know that it works, or until you have enough time and resources to actually build it properly. In the case of selling and producing a product, this dropshipping came up as the solution. So what is dropshipping? Dropshipping is a way to sell products to your customer without actually ever having them in your hands. So let's imagine you have a customer, he's living in the United States, he comes to your online shop, maybe your online shop is in Switzerland like mine, and he pays you money for the product that you're offering there. You, on the other hand, forward this order to a dropshipping provider. Maybe that dropshipping provider is in China. And so you tell exactly what the dropshipping provider has to ship to your customer in the United States. And of course you pay the provider a certain amount of money for it. Usually this amount should be less than what the customer in the United States paid for you. Otherwise, it would not be a very lucrative business. So then maybe after a day or two, your dropshipping provider has everything packed and ships it off to your customer. Now, depending on your provider, that package that goes on the way to the United States is either white labeled, so it doesn't have any brand of the factory in China on it, or it even has your brand on it. But this is a feature depending on your provider. But how do you find such a drop shipping provider? I'm a very big fan of this Chinese page called Banggood.com. They sell everything from electronic components, clothes, and kitchen appliances. So whatever you're looking for, they're selling there for a very good price. And they also happen to offer several partnership programs, one of them being dropshipping. But Banggood is by no means the only dropshipping provider. There are others like Deal Extreme, or also merchant platforms like AliExpress, where you can look for one of many merchants that also offers dropshipping. So in my case, I had to find out if Banggood, as my favorite shopping platform in China, would offer all the components that I needed for my kit. And it turned out they had it. I knew that the prices for these components probably not the best that I could find on the market, but that was not the point. I didn't want to find the best price. I just wanted to find out if I could ship these products to my customers, and in the first place, if my customers would be interested in buying this. And of course, price is not completely irrelevant. If your drop shipping provider asks for too much, then the price for your product will be too high and you will not be able to sell it. So I created a photo of the components, and I had my first starter kit. But that was not yet the shop. So what is the MVP for an online shop? You can either install some plugins into your WordPress blog, but there's an even easier way. You can open an account on PayPal if you don't have one, and there are some options to create a Buy Now button. And once someone buys a product through that Buy Now button, then you receive an email, like here in the sample, and you know that what and where you have to ship the product. And that's what I did. So that's how my first product page looked like. It was just another page on my blog. It was set up within just a few minutes. I added the Buy Now, or in this case the Add to Cart button. Also made sure that the conditions for shipping were clear, and I was ready for business. So I had my first shop set up, wonderful, and I had also my first orders coming in. But I still needed a lot of manual work to do, but since I was working under the premise of fake it until you make it, it was okay that I would handle these orders manually. So I used Google Docs and a spreadsheet on Google Docs to manage and track the orders that I had received, and would then copy paste the addresses I entered in the Google spreadsheet into the order form of Banggood. So that was a very manual process, and it took a lot of time. But since I only had a few orders, it was okay to spend a lot of time. I was still trying to figure out if I had a product. And I think this is really the essence of the idea of an MVP. You don't have to build everything perfect from the beginning. It's most important that the customer feels that he has a good product, that he receives a good product, but everything that happens behind the scenes can be manual. And once it takes off and once you receive a lot of business, you can still go ahead and automate it. So if I received an order, I would enter everything in the Google spreadsheet just for tracking, so I wouldn't lose any orders, and then would go to Banggood and add one component by one component into the cart. And sometimes it would happen that not all components could be shipped from the same warehouse. So the downside of this MVP was that my customers wouldn't receive all components with one delivery. That in turn had some other side effects, that they complained that one component was missing, but a little bit of email forth and back, and I could convince them that everything was in order and that they would receive everything. I also had other problems, like one of the components running out of stock. The display, for instance, would be sold out very quickly, and then it would take weeks to be on stock again. And you learn to deal with all these problems, also with lost packages. You consider using tracking, because if a customer complains that a product didn't arrive, you're never quite sure if he's just saying that it didn't arrive or if it really was lost on the way to the customer. So honestly, the user or customer experience of my first product wasn't all that great. Usually the packages would be received in these ugly little plastic bags, and it was not a high value product. It was not really designed like I wanted it, and that's on the plus side, I could test the market and I found out that there was a market. One thing about dropshipping or using dropshipping for providing your product is that you are really the man or the woman in the middle. So if your customer has complaints, he only knows you as the provider of the service or the good. The customer will not contact the dropshipping provider in the first place. So you're the only one place for reliability towards the customer. And you in turn then might have to go to your dropshipping provider and complain about lost goods or damaged goods, but this might become time intensive, and also it will eat up your margin at one point. But on the upside, within a few months I could ship about 120 orders to 23 countries, and I also had only one lost order in the process. You might think 120 orders is not so much, but keep in mind that I was just experimenting and trying to figure out if there was a market. And I didn't have to spend a lot of time and money to manufacture a product and set up a complex shop system with automated order forwarding. So I was doing a lot by hand. Yes, it took a lot of time initially. I think one order cost me about nearly half an hour. But over time, I automated more and more and could bring this way of creating an order down to maybe 5 minutes. And that's kind of really in the sense of lean startup and minimum viable product, that you can automate when it starts to hurt and not from the beginning, because maybe you think something will hurt, but it doesn't hurt so much, and something else will start to consume a lot more time, and then it's worth to invest your time there to automate this if you can. So, summary of my first job, of the ups and downs. It was very easy to set up. It was very good to test this market. I could really figure out that people were interested and appreciated it, that they could buy the right components from me rather than buying them by themselves. It was absolutely not start capital intensive. I mean, it only did cost me a few hours to figure everything out, to test it and have it running. And also, it was very good for learning about e-commerce, problems that could come up, to deal with your customers' complaints, to learn about products being out of stock and what you have to do on your shop if that happens. So all these aspects were really good for trying this out. But it was a minimum viable product. So I knew from the start that there would also be some downsides. And these are a lot of manual steps in processing an order. Of course, because you're doing it manual, there is a high chance that you're making mistakes. Then the customer experience is not really well. As I mentioned, they received products in these ugly plastic bags that looked like trash bags. Also, they might have received it in 2 or 3 deliveries instead of just one. You don't have a lot of influence on how the product looks like. You either buy it as it comes, or you just can't ship it. And depending on you, and you depend a lot on your provider, like in the situation that I mentioned, that one part of the product was out of stock. I couldn't speed things up. It was just out of my reach. I could ask them to be more quick, but Banggood is a huge organization and they didn't really care about me. So my influence in this case was very limited. And of course, because you have an additional broker in the middle or middleman, your margin might be lower, but this reflects very well your lower risk, since you don't have to buy stock up front. You just order it when you get an order on your side, and so the risk is very low for this. So again, here are some tools that I used or that were important for this process. Of course, as in the first part explained, I had a WordPress set up. I had Google Analytics, which told me that I received a lot of traffic in one of my blog posts, which in turn led me to the idea of creating a product. I used the checkout button or the buy button from PayPal instead of creating a complex shop system, just for testing my idea. And I used Google Docs to manage the orders and also to automate part of the order process after a while. Okay, now I want to talk about something related to your first product, and this is the ebook. I realized that my product was a bit hard to set up, so I thought it would be a good idea to create an ebook. Why would you do that in the first place? So as I mentioned, the product was a bit complex. I needed setup instructions anyway. And an ebook, as opposed to a pamphlet, was easy to add to a dropshipping product. Remember that with a dropshipping product, you never really have physical access to the product. You cannot just add some piece of paper to it. And an ebook I could send to my customers just by email. Also, in my case, I had a lot of the content already written on my blog. It was kind of additional projects that you could do with the provided hardware, and also the setup instructions were pages on my WordPress blog. Then another nice aspect of creating an ebook for your physical product is that they complement each other. The manual was helping the physical product to be understandable, but on the other hand, by selling the ebook or offering this ebook for free in some cases, also made advertisement for the physical product. So actually, in some cases, my customers even paid me to read my advertisement. You can use the ebook also as a lead magnet, as you can see here on this pop-up from my blog. Once you subscribe to the newsletter, you get the ebook for free. And as I showed in the first part, once you have a giveaway like an ebook, is it if it is a one pager or if it is like 50 pages like this one, then a lot of people are more eager to sign up to your newsletter and in order to get the book. And also it creates some additional passive income. Once you have written the book, you just can leave it there. People buy it from one of the platforms where you're offering, and you just get a little bit of additional money. But you might say, okay, creating an ebook is hard, or a book in general. I first started writing it on Google Docs, but then I found this platform called LeanPub.com, and they offer services that help you a lot to create your book. You write the book in a very simple format, basically just text. If you know LaTeX, then it's very similar format. Also, Markdown on GitHub is very similar to the format that they use on LeanPub. And once you have written the document, you can create various formats from this one and also offer it on their platform. One funny aspect of LeanPub is that you can configure your book page and your book price in a voluntary way. So the customer can decide how much they want to pay for you. They also see how much you earn from it. And this is an interesting experiment by itself. Quite a lot of people pay less than the price that you ask. Some pay more and some just pay what you ask for. As I mentioned, one nice aspect of LeanPub is that it creates various formats for you. In the end, after creating it on their system, you can sell the book on Amazon, on Google Play, on iBooks, and also create just a plain simple PDF. And everything looks nice since you created everything from the same source format. But there are other aspects on an ebook. You want to create a nice cover. Here on the left, you saw my first initial approach. You might like it or not, but I wasn't really happy on it. And I thought there must be some service that is easy enough without much negotiation, where I can find someone who creates a nice book cover for me. And a friend had pointed out to me the platform called Fiverr. I went there and found someone who created this new design, and for only $16 I didn't just receive two offers, two different designs, but also a 3D design which I could use very nicely on various places to advertise the ebook. So what is Fiverr? Fiverr is not just about creating ebook covers, but it's one of the services that you can find there. For me, Fiverr is a very nice way to commoditize services. As you can see here, it's very clear what you get for what you pay for. For instance, in this merchant or this service provider offers for $5, $10, or $30 various levels of services. For instance, for $5, you just get the 3D image. You can use it commercially. But if you just pay $5 more, it's print ready. You get the front and the back side. You still don't get the source file, which might be important in some cases. And in this case, you have unlimited revisions for all three packages, which means that when you don't like, or if you don't like what they provide after 4 days or 2 days, you can ask them for a new revision. They will go back and change it according to your wishes until you're happy, and then they will get paid for their services. And there are various other scenarios how you can use this service, but it's very easy to get in contact with someone. It works worldwide. As you can see, this service provider is from Morocco, and I think really after 2 days I had my book cover and I liked it very much. I picked one of the two that were provided to me, and then I could go on and use it my ebook. But as I mentioned, Fiverr has a lot of other service providers and services to offer. You can also use it to proofread your book for a very reasonable price. You can design an ebook cover, as we've just seen, or for your website or your new product, you can also create a logo for a reasonable price. Also here, like in many places, the rating is important and how many people have used that specific service provider. So you can compare, read the feedback, and get an impression if you're gonna be happy with that service provider. So we're already at the end of part 2. What have we seen? I quickly want to summarize. I showed you how you can find out if you have a product based on your data. In my case, I used Google Analytics and I saw a peak in interest from where I deduce that specific page or project might be a product. Then I started experimenting with that product. The minimum viable product was the approach for this. Reduce your product really to what is necessary, to not waste too much time on something that no one wants. In this aspect, we also talked about the lean startup and this build, measure, learn cycle. Then, as an incarnation of the minimum viable service, if you want, we had a look at dropshipping and what it is, how it works. Also, I showed you my way of the minimum viable shop, reduced to just a buy button on from PayPal that I included into my WordPress page. And then I showed you how ebooks can be used as a complementary to your, or as a complement to your products. And then finally we had a look at the tool or at the platform called Fiverr, where you can use a lot of help. You can outsource your work for a very reasonable price and get faster with your product to market. That was it for the part 2. Very many thanks for watching, and I hope you're gonna join me in the third part, where we're gonna have a look at producing and manufacturing products in China and shipping them to places all over the world.